Something doesn't make sense. People still dream about finding the one. They still imagine growing old beside someone. They still want that person to laugh with over morning coffee, to travel with, to lean on when life becomes difficult. So why does forever feel harder than ever? I thought I knew the answer. Maybe it was dating apps. Maybe it was social media. Maybe we had all become too busy. But the more I read and the more women I spoke to, the more I realized those answers didn't fully explain what was happening. Because here's something that stopped me in my tracks. Research by the Pew Research Center continues to show that most adults still value committed relationships and marriage, even though fewer people are getting married. So people haven't stopped wanting lasting love. If the dream hasn't disappeared, what has? At first, I blamed dating apps. They're an easy target. Swipe left, swipe right, another face, another conversation, another possibility. But then I realized something. Long before smartphones existed, people still felt lonely in marriages. People still had affairs. People still drifted apart. People still sat across the dinner table with nothing left to say. Dating apps didn't invent those problems. Then I thought, maybe it's social media. Maybe we're constantly comparing our relationships to everyone else's highlight reel. Perhaps, but unhappy relationships existed long before Facebook. So I kept asking myself, what am I missing? Then one conversation changed everything. A woman said to me, Bernie, I wasn't lonely after my divorce. I was lonely while I was still married. I've never forgotten those words, because they describe a kind of loneliness that nobody can see. You can share a home, a bed, a routine, even 40 years together, and still feel emotionally alone. That's when I started looking somewhere completely different. Not at technology, not at men, not at women, but at how relationships themselves have changed. Think about life 50 years ago. Families often lived close together. People were very sociable. Neighbours dropped in. People belonged to clubs, churches, bowling clubs, sporting teams, community groups. If you were struggling, connection came from many places. Today, many of those circles have become much smaller. Without even noticing, we've quietly asked one relationship to carry what an entire community once shared. We want one person to be our best friend, our confidant, our travel companion, our emotional support, our biggest cheerleader, our soulmate, and our safe place. That's an extraordinary amount to ask of another human being. Maybe relationships haven't become weaker. Maybe we've simply made them carry more weight than ever before. But that wasn't the last surprise. Psychologists talk about something called the paradox of choice. When we believe there are endless possibilities, choosing can actually become harder. Every swipe whispers, "What if there's someone better?" Not because someone better exists, but because our minds keep imagining they might. Comparison quietly steals contentment, yet even that wasn't the biggest lesson. The biggest lesson came from decades of relationship research. The couples who stayed happily together weren't the couples who never argued. They weren't the couples with perfect chemistry. They weren't even the couples who agreed on everything. They were the couples who repaired. They apologized. They came back after difficult conversations. They stayed curious instead of defensive. They kept talking. That changed how I think about love. Maybe we've spent decades searching for compatibility, when we should have been learning communication. Compatibility might begin a relationship, but communication is what carries it through. Disappointment, stress, illness, financial pressure, growing older, and becoming different people over time. Maybe that's why forever feels harder today. Not because love disappeared, not because commitment disappeared, but because modern relationships ask two imperfect people to carry more emotional weight than ever before. And somehow, we're expected to know how to do that without ever being taught. But here's the hopeful part. Communication can be learned. Repair can be learned. Listening can be learned, which means stronger relationships can be built. Maybe forever isn't disappearing. Maybe forever simply looks different now. Less pretending, more honesty, less perfection, more repair. Less mind reading, and more conversations. Because I don't believe love usually ends in one dramatic moment. I think it quietly fades through hundreds of conversations that never happen. And perhaps that's the real lesson. We spend so much of our lives searching for the one. Maybe the real secret isn't finding the perfect person. Maybe it's two imperfect people who never stop learning from each other, never stop listening, and never stop choosing each other. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think long-term relationships are disappearing? Or do you think we've simply forgotten what long-term love actually needs? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Some of the best conversations in this community begin there. If these conversations resonate with you, I'd love you to subscribe and join us here at the Women's Shed. Until next time, I'm Bernie. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.